Hey everyone, welcome to Energy Matters Live. I'm Tim Eccles, your host, KC Boyce, my co-host, and we are talking about innovation in this segment, KC, and we just had the opportunity to hear from Juliet and this Innovator of the Year award in consumer education as such an important thing, and I really appreciate their organization pushing it forward.
Yeah, and of course, we've had Juliet on the show before, and we broke the news for our listeners a couple of weeks ago that you were receiving this Innovator of the Year award by her organization, the Smart Grid Customer Education Symposium. So congratulations on that. And I think what we wanted to talk about in this segment here is just, Tim, what are some of the innovative customer education things that you've been involved in as a commissioner? I mean, certainly we've got the radio show, right? And that airs every week across a lot of markets across the state, which is great, gives us an opportunity to talk energy and sustainability with folks. But what other kinds of things are you doing?
I think the Clean Energy Roadshow, and we had originally branded it, KC, as the Alternative Fuel Roadshow. And when we started this event in 2011, the Nissan Leaf was just coming out. We had some CNG vehicles, some LNG vehicles, flex fuel vehicles, but we began this trek around our state, really alternating each summer with different communities. So we would go to Macon, we'd go to Savannah. We'd do Savannah every year because Savannah is just such a progressive city there with the coast, and such a conscientious effort on the part of everyone there regarding air and water quality. So we felt like that was an important city. We go to Augusta, which Augusta really is an electric vehicle capital. Folks don't think about it that much, but it really is the electric vehicle capital of Georgia because Club Car and E-Z-GO are there, and they make all of these electric golf carts and basically knockoff of golf carts, right? Mm-hmm. So these low-speed electric vehicles that are used all over the world.
Yeah, and this past year with events being limited, of course, you've had to take the Clean Energy Roadshow virtual. And I'm curious, like, have you reached larger audiences as a result? People that wouldn't be able to show up in Savannah or Augusta or wherever because by Zoom?
Yeah, just like we've done on the radio show, Casey, when we've done StreamYard events broadcasting our show, where folks can kind of watch us record our radio show. Even this episode now is being broadcast out across Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, but it also plays on all the markets that we're in: Athens, Brunswick, Savannah, Clarksville, Atlanta. So we've seen that with the Alternative Fuel Roadshow or Clean Energy Roadshow, that when we did a hybrid event with a few people live and the rest of the folks out there viewing our presenters who were doing much like I am with headphones now, these presenters would be on Zoom with headphones in front of the technology, whether it was at the Atlanta airport, at the Delta hangar, or at a biogas factory, or on top of the nanatorium in Atlanta with solar. We've always wanted people to be able to see it, Casey, and engage with the technology. And the other thing that we've tried to do for both the virtual audience and the in-person audience is to be honest about the technology, because if all we're doing is putting forth propaganda about the technology, then you wind up having consumers get it and they're disappointed because it doesn't perform the way that maybe we advertised it to. So we want people to think about these things and see and see how the technology will benefit them, looking at the duty cycle that their particular company or their commute will use, because we want them to have a great experience with this and become ambassadors just like we are.
Yeah, and it's so important that actually seeing and potentially getting your hands on the technology. Of course, listeners may know I live in Decatur, and we've done a couple of solarized programs, first one in 2016 and then one last year in 2020. And the number of houses in Decatur that have solar on their roof and that it's visible from the street, right? And I think that has a huge impact. I've seen people who haven't participated in solarized programs putting solar on their roof because they're looking around and they're seeing, well, my neighbors have it, and maybe I'll go talk to them and see how it works. And, of course, I've talked about my experience, and, solar is not perfect, but when you see it, you see people are investing in it. You can ask people about it. I've certainly had that experience with my EVs as well, Tim. I'm sure you have too. But just before we went live here, you were talking about something else that you were doing. I want to pick up on a thread around renewable natural gas, right? We've talked about this on the show before. This is taking, some sort of biomass or, landfill gas or something like that and putting it into the natural gas system. So, Tim, what did you just do to help educate folks around renewable natural gas?
Yeah, so just earlier before our broadcast, I was on a RNG Zoom, and instead of sitting, in my bedroom, with a diffuser going with some essential oil smelling nicely, I was in back of a manure truck at my daughter's stable, and she had just mucked out some stalls, and that manure was in back of the vehicle, and so I stood there and talked about how that poultry litter, cow manure, horse manure, pig manure, that all of this has some value to it. And it's up to our commission and others to be able to figure out, how do we create programs so that this stuff, instead of just sitting there in a lagoon and becoming methane, how can we encapsulate that lagoon? How can we transport that litter to an anaerobic digester and turn this material into a pipeline quality gas that a UPS then, Casey, can run their truck up and down the road on? So, to me, as I think about what I want to do over the next 6 years on the Public Service Commission, creating more than one RNG anaerobic digesting facility and getting this litter, particularly in North Georgia, this chicken litter, turning it into fuel for vehicles. It is probably the number one thing I want to do.
So, we don't have a lot of lagoons in Decatur. We do have some urban chickens, but probably not enough to fill pipelines. And we've talked about end uses, right, of renewable natural gas before, but kind of sticking with this theme of education, right? Part of it is getting the farmers, the folks who are raising these animals and managing this waste, to realize that there's some value, as you said, in the waste and turning it into a renewable natural gas. How has the outreach to that group gone, and how receptive have they been to it?
Yeah, I think farmers know this. They're smarter than people give them credit for. I think they get this. It's just there is no mechanism to be able to get that manure into a truck, transported 20, 30, 50, 100 miles down the road. And who's going to pay for that? And how is the farmer going to get compensation? And because they're not going to want to take money out of their family's pocket and pay for diesel fuel to transport it down the road, it has to be there has to be a pricing scheme and a plan that works for everyone. And so I really think the farmers would be happy to get on board with this. Right now they may be selling it to their neighbor who's a hay farmer and spreading the chicken litter out across a pasture, what looks like a pasture or a field, as fertilizer. Mm-hmm. But Casey, the runoff, here's one of the unintended consequences. The runoff of phosphorus into Lake Lanier and the fecal matter content of Lake Lanier is increased by all of this manure going into what is Gwinnett County and Atlanta's drinking water. Right. And so we want to be able to create these value propositions, just like we have with slash in a field, a timber or pine plantation field. We want to be able to create a value proposition so that the landowner has a reason to do something other than let it sit there.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a huge difference. In Decatur, again, we don't have a lot of these manure lagoons, but we do have a lot of dogs, and we're at the very top of a watershed. And we actually have an issue with listed streams here in Decatur because we're at the top of the watershed, and that impacts everyone downstream from us, right? And so, you think about Gwinnett County and, Lake Lanier and Lake Allatoona and, all of those drinking water reservoirs and the watershed that feeds into that, and really making sure that it's high quality, not just for recreation, but for drinking, right?
Yeah, Casey, I wish we had time to go through all the stuff that's happened over the last decade in my regulatory life, but we don't in this episode. But I do want to just say to our listeners, look, if you have an idea, I'd love to hear from you. Just shoot me an email at tim@timeccles.com, for anything for the commission, anything for energy in Georgia, or if you have a guest you want that you want to get to us to be on Energy Matters. Hey, thanks, Casey, for being with us today as we talked about innovation. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to Energy Matters. Hope you've had a great time on our show today. And Casey, hope you have a great weekend. Everyone, thanks for listening. Have a fantastic day.